Hi everyone, this is Jim. Welcome to this post-mortem video. This is a Blitz chess post-mortem of my game number 54, where I start out with d4 and my opponent went into the Queen's Gambit accepted. So let's take a look at that. d4, d5, c4, and d takes. You can see that's the third most popular choice after c6, the Slav, and e6, the traditional Queen's Gambit declined. And the other interesting move here, one of the other interesting moves here is knight c6, the Chigorin defense, and also e5, which is some kind of counter gambit. I forget what that's called right now. But anyway, d takes c4 is the Queen's Gambit accepted. And knight f3 is a normal response. And after one of these other moves like knight f6, you follow up with e3, and then typically you are able to just recapture that pawn. It's not supposed to be good to try and hold on to that pawn, but that's what my opponent did in this game, and I was unable to refute him. He played the immediate b5. And so I guess after b5, it looks like the book move is a4. Houdini likes either a4 or e3. So those are ideas. I'm going to keep Houdini on during this one. There was there was a few tactical moments, but no moment that made a great tactical quiz. So we'll just go through and look at the interesting sequences with the help of the computer there. So let's check out this idea. If you just immediately try to undermine this a4 move, what's the most likely outcome? So after that, he could try c6, or he could try b4. c6 is interesting, trying to defend it this way. If he plays a6, of course, you can just take because there's a pin on this file. So, and it looks like taking is not that great. Well, it leaves a bunch of weak pawns over here. So I guess black is not going to take. So I guess that's the point of a4. So two main replies would be c6, b4, knight f6, just ignoring it and letting you take back. But suppose he tries to hold on to it with c6. You take, he takes, and then you can play e3, and this can transpose into something if you had played e3 and then he played b4 and c6 at some later time. So here he can try knight d7, bishop b7. Let's try bishop b7, protecting this diagonal. Then you undermine with b3. Okay, this is kind of similar to what happened in the game. It's not really clear to me why this is bad for black, but I guess eventually he stops trying to hold on to these pawns. It looks like the computer's recommending knight f6 here, or e6, both of which allow you to just take that pawn, and it leaves black with his isolated pawn over here. Is there any way for him to hold on? If he plays c3, you can take it with the knight. If he takes your pawn, you can take it with the queen, or you can take here with check and then take here with the queen like I did in the game. So I guess there's just no good way to hold on to it. And let's back up. Clicking the wrong buttons here. Instead of c6, the other idea was to play b4, just pushing that pawn forward. And it looks like white can ignore that for a while and play e4. And now he's threatening to take that pawn. So if black plays c5, it seems like a logical follow-up, or e6, either way, you can play bishop takes c4. And so you've gotten your pawn back, and it looks like you have a good game with development and center control. So that's probably the way to go. You immediately try and undermine with a4. So I played e4, and we're out of book here, so let's just go look at the notation tab. It still thinks, even though I haven't played the best moves here, it still thinks, even though I'm a pawn down, it still thinks that white is better than black. So that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. So here, knight bd2 is not the best move. And what's interesting was I thought about the move knight c3 here, and I thought this would be bad because of the move b4, just hitting the knight. and chasing it away from that pawn. But I overlooked this queen check, which is pretty strong. So he blocks the check, you take that pawn, and now you've got your pawn back. The knight's still defending the e-pawn, and once again you've got good development, a good center, and things are very rosy. So knight c3 would have been a good way to go here after bishop b7. Instead I played knight bd2, fearing unnecessarily that pawn push. So and now suddenly it swings to black's favor. So this shows the danger in playing against one of these sharp kind of openings. If you don't refute it in the correct way, then your opponent can get an advantage. So got to put in your thinking cap at these moments and find the right way to undermine. Okay, so the game continues for a while with slight advantage to black. I do undermine here, and this is correct. And he's not playing exactly the best moves all the time. Of course, we're not computers, so you don't expect that. e5 allows me to push his knight around and get back to a more or less equal position. But I make a mistake pretty soon. And yeah, so right here, I guess I can leave this pawn here as long as I like, because he's never going to take it. And if he advances, then I can grab the c-pawn. So there was no hurry to take that pawn. The computer says I should just go ahead and castle there. But I took and then exchanged rooks, and then I played this move b3. And now there's a nice move for black here, which you see on the computer screen. He can throw in this bishop b4 check. He doesn't have to respond to this undermining operation right away. But if he does that, it's a little awkward for me. I don't want to block with the knight or the bishop. He throws in bishop b4 check. If I try to block with either one of these pieces, he can just push the pawn and attack them, and when they get out of the way, they can push the pawn again with a double attack with a check on the king and an attack on the queen. So that's just disaster. So I have to move the king to f1. It's kind of an awkward move. So after this move b3, that allows bishop b4 check, and I have to play king f1. So that's not good. But he took here, and so once again, it's not too far away from even. And now I can do that trick I talked about. Instead of taking with the queen first, although they're not too far apart. You can take with the bishop first, and after he blocks the check, then I can grab this pawn here. He says he should try and block with c6, force the bishop to move again. So when he plays this move, it allows me to take back. Now, once again, things are slightly in favor of white, more or less an even game. So we continue to develop normally here. And I was a little worried when I saw this. I hadn't been expecting this exchange here because the bishop was initially pinned, and I figured I could just trade it off at an opportune time. I was planning to pile up with the rook and then trade. So it surprised me when he grabbed my knight like this, and I was a little worried. But it turned out, and the course of the game showed, that he loses more by giving up that bishop for the knight than this damage is worth. So he's inflicted a little bit of damage. But basically his pieces are not in a great position, and he doesn't have a whole lot of force left, so he can't get an immediate kingside attack, and my king turns out to be pretty safe over here in spite of this open file. So c6 attacking the bishop, I retreat, and queen d5. And so I don't want to trade queens here. I just defend my pawn so my bishop is free to move, and I kick his queen around. And all this maintains some advantage for white. And white should have an advantage because of this isolated pawn here as a weakness, and also because he has the two bishops. So that's the basis for white's advantage here. I don't really want to trade queens here. And now, yeah, here's an interesting point. I was focusing a lot on the c-pawn, and I played this move rook c1 to try and increase the pressure. But there's another plan here, which is to do a move like rook d1 and try and activate this rook. And my king is relatively safe. I don't have any back rank problems, so that means my rook can go and invade on the 7th rank. That's one idea. And the second idea is to push d5 here. And looks like this is just a strong advantage for white. So knight d7, rook b1. It's related to the other idea. So it's a combination of d5 and rook b1. The queen has to move out of the way, and it wants to hold on to this pawn. and then rook b7 onto the 7th rank and attacking his pieces. So it's a good advantage for white. Just gives him a good game with this active rook, and black is forced back into a defensive posture. So in this position, the moves d5 and rook b1 constitute the best plan. I played rook c1, which is maintains some slight advantage for white, but not a big one. Looks like he needs to play knight d5 here to hold on. Well, the best move. He plays c4, so lets me back in the game. But now I make a second mistake here. So I should just push d5, and I actually thought about this, and I decided that trading queens would be better. But that is completely wrong, and what I missed was that after trading queens, my rook ends up on this dark square, and his bishop can come and harass it here, and I can't get back at it. So this move bishop to b4 after the exchange, I just missed that, and it's a very good move. It allows him to push his pawn forward. I was looking forward to taking advantage of this pin here by playing a move like, so this pin, these guys are, the pawn is pinned because if it moves off of this file, I can just grab the rook. So I can play a move like bishop to d3 here, attacking that pawn, and he can't take it. So I could have done that immediately, but of course he can just push the pawn forward. The computer likes, again, the idea of d5 or secondarily rook b1. Okay, so I played queen c3, and now I get back into a mode where it's even, and he pushes his pawn forward, defending it with his bishop, and now I have trouble with it. And I push my pawn forward, and I'm just going to try and activate my king by bringing him over this way and attacking this pawn. I thought I might still have an edge here, but turns out this is not much. Computer gives a slight advantage to white, but hardly anything to build on. Yep, froze up. There it goes. Okay, let's back up. F takes e5. g5. Yeah, stopping me from supporting this pawn with the move f4, which is would have been good in this position. So I come over to attack this pawn, which is my plan, but now he can start, well, first of all, he's got pressure on my only passed pawn here. His knight is attacking it, and if I take the pawn, bishop takes, rook takes, rook takes. Now, how's it go? Bishop takes, rook takes, rook takes. No. Yeah. My bishop takes, his bishop takes, my rook takes, his rook takes, check. I take the rook, and then his knight grabs this pawn over here. So, and then it's just an even game. Bishop against a rook and two pawns all on one side of the board. Very drosh. So I was trying to keep some life in the position, hold on to that pawn, but it just turns out there's no good way to do it. And but here, this move, knight g4, was not the best move, and I have a good idea. So this is my last chance to do something good in this game. And, you know, I was a little worried about his knight attacking my pawn. Pawns are very precious when you get to the endgame, but piece activity matters a lot too, even in the endgame. So look at this, rook a2, and it says he should play bishop d6. But if he, the point is, if he grabs this pawn, I don't need to defend that pawn, because if he grabs it, I can play the move rook to a7 here. And this is just winning. It drives his king back, and now I have both my bishops in position to support that pawn all the way to where it becomes a queen. And so this is just really good. Anyway, so he wouldn't have. He might have taken that pawn. If I had left that as bait for him, you know, that's what you want to do. You want to leave bait for your opponent. So if he had taken that pawn, I could play rook a2 and see if he wants to take it. But I didn't even think of that idea. I was worried about him taking that pawn, and I played h3. And so he retreats the knight, and now it's an even game again. And that was really the last chance. We can go through the rest of the moves, but the point is I can win this pawn, but this remaining pawn can't be defended. So I'll just show you what happens. First, I stopped his knight from coming in to this square. Because that was one way he was able to get a pawn back, was you exchange everything out, but my king is left on this square, and the knight comes here with check and forks my king here and my pawn there. So I move my pawn to f3. He plays his knight back, is getting in position to attack this pawn, which can't be advanced. And I can't harass his king and get it away from that square because his bishop is covering this diagonal, and this square is covered by his king and his knight. So I take the pawn and we exchange out here, and then he goes after my pawn, and there's just no way to defend it. So I get my king over here to defend. Actually, I have to worry about him getting a queen now, so I have to get my king back to this side of the board. But it's completely drawn at this point, and so we just play it out. But there was really no way to win. I get my king in front of the pawn, just so at this point I can give up my pawn. I just need to get my bishop on a diagonal that stops his pawn from advancing. We play a few moves more, and in this position here, yeah, it would have been simpler for me just to take the knight. Bishop takes, king takes, and then my king goes here, and that's a drawn position. You have to double check these things before getting rid of the last piece. But if you know for sure that's a draw, it's the simplest way to draw the game. But just keeping my bishop there and moving my king back and forth, and then you take the pawn. So when there's two minor pieces and a pawn, it's hard to win because the minor piece can't win by itself. You have to keep the pawn alive, and you can always sacrifice a piece. So that's a draw right there immediately because neither side has mating force. So that was it. So I thought there were a few instructive points there to that game, and maybe learned a little something about the Queen's Gambit accepted. So hope you guys enjoyed that, and leave any comments you have in the section below, and I'll see you again soon. Bye.